There we go. And we can get this show on the road. If you're just jumping on, the icebreaker in the chat is just introduce yourself, tell us a little about your ministry context, and then what is your Pavlovian response to the phrase teamwork? Some love it, some hate it, some find it challenging, but really see the value. These are our third Thursday conversations where we get to go down some rabbit holes of church planting and what it takes, the nitty gritty, some things that are probably good for the whole church to hear and to ponder about, some things that may be just a little more relevant for starting something from scratch. And one of the just probably biggest comments I hear, Mike, you might have heard this a good bit too when you were staff officer for church planting, is this thing about teams. We know it's important, love the concept, and again, it's something that very few of us learned much about at least in seminary. There may be others with other professional experience who learned a lot more, but it's easy to say create a core team, but what actually are the stories and the practices and behaviors that maybe we can learn from? So I am hoping that this is helpful, but I invited Michie and Joseph Kovitch to just join me in a sort of a little panel conversation around this. Guys, I've got some questions I'd love to send your way. I'll probably also do a little reflecting on my experience at the Abbey too. But then folks who are out there, maybe toss some questions or thoughts and comments as we go along into the chat box, and we'll make sure that we leave plenty of time to engage in some open conversation around this. That sound okay? Sweet. Mike and then Joseph, would you just introduce yourselves first, and maybe just the ministry context you're going to be thinking of when you talk about core teams?
Sure. Hi, everyone. A special hey, what's up? For those of you that I'm seeing again that I haven't seen in a long time via the miracle of the Zooms. And love to some people I haven't met yet. So excited about that too. I'm talking to you. It's a beautiful day here in San Antonio, Texas. I'm the rector at St. Thomas Episcopal Church and School here. The context I'm thinking of was I planted a church in McKinney, Texas, just north of Dallas, and was there for 13 years. Moved from Houston to Dallas to McKinney without really knowing the city at all. It was a classic sort of parachute drop church plant. And planted the church there, stayed there 13 years, got the building built, and established a congregation. So suburban, it was a kind of suburban context of a sort of classic brick and mortar church plant. So that's me. Joseph.
Thank you. So I'm Joseph Kovitch. I live in a multiverse. Let's see. The past 9.5 years, I've been a redeveloper. St. Matthew's Episcopal Church. I'm in the Southern Diocese of Ohio, in the Columbus, Ohio area. And so I've been living in redevelopment. How do you change the culture of a inherited church community into a missional community? So that was a community. St. Matthew's lost its building, and so for 9.5 years, we've been in kind of a church without walls. So we have a community house with co-space, art space, and we were worshiping in an Irish pub. So that then developed another invitation for me to go bivocational to do church planting right before the pandemic hit, like 2 months. And so our church plant became a urban garden, sacred table. And so for the past 3 years, we've been developing a narrative around church plant in my bivocationality. But my work with St. Matthew's gave wonderful the platform of questions and teams and community. So, and actually in a year and a half in now, last night was our first launch. We did a love feast with a partnership with Sacred Table and another Episcopal church that has 12 members and doesn't want to die. And then the third part is I'm going to be on the diocesan staff as a missioner for new Episcopal communities starting now. And so all these connect in some way, but it's living in the beautiful question of what God's up to, and that's me, and I'm honored to be a part of this conversation. And also, if you're looking to relocate to Central Ohio for new Episcopal communities, give me a call. Anyway.
Awesome, Mike and Joseph. So I'm thinking back to my church planning context, the Abbey in Birmingham, and I guess I started, I don't know, 8, maybe even 9 years ago. Just kind of from like the conception of the idea to the reality of what the church looks like now. And that was before I had any concept of core teams or of needing any kind of training or support or even like letter of agreement to do this kind of church planting work. I mean, just nothing, no coaching, nothing. And so I think I went in with this idea that, something like a team was going to have to form, but I just never heard of the concept of like a load bearing core team and even what that would do. And my personality is one that just wants to take the whole thing, run and do it myself. And so this kind of team building doesn't come naturally. But I wonder, in your context, what was it that inspired you to build a core team? Did you just instinctively know? Did a coach tell you to do it? Did you go to training?
Well, what inspired me to build a core team was absolute desperation and necessity. This conversation has allowed me to reflect and think a little bit in a very beautiful way. For when the moving van pulled up in McKinney, I didn't even know anyone in town, at all. So the first people I met were like, "Hi, I'm Mike. Would you like to be on the core launch team of a new Episcopal church?" I mean, that's literally how the conversations went. And that's one of the major reflections I like to share with you is I think I often wonder if the best launch teams are the ones that you don't choose. You're doing, in my context, I was meeting people, discipling them, and placing them in leadership all at the very same time. When Paul wrote Timothy, don't lay hands on anyone too quickly. Man, I broke that every day. Because I was like, you're here and you're interested in this. Congratulations, you're in charge, So anyway, my experience was I would challenge this idea that you have to have a team before you start. I think you can, because I certainly didn't. And you can build a team as you go. And I think that's it makes it very dynamic and very exciting. You have to pay I know I paid my share of I made some mistakes, and that I did probably put some people in leadership quicker than I ought to have, but that was all part of the journey. So not knowing what y'all's context is, I just encourage you, even if it's just you right now, you can build your team with the people that Jesus will absolutely be faithful to send you.
You good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was, I think necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
And I, you know, all these euphemisms. Okay, so you build a plane while you fly it. That's better than building a bike while you ride it, because you know the chance of crashing and burning gives you the incentive to keep building or keep flapping your wings. To me, you know, my conversation with the diocese was always when I came on board with St. Matthew's, you know, was, well, we've never done this before. You write the job description. Same thing with church planting. Same thing with new Episcopal communities. So I think it was natural, instinctive, trusting your gut, because I think human beings are just naturally communal. They long to be in connection. So for me, at each level, I just started with just showing up and asking the question, what would it look like if blank? Like, what would it look like? I mean, capturing their imagination, because that's always when you build the team, is how do you keep the energy going? How do you keep that incentive? What is that incentive? So inviting people into the question, you know, to me, it was just showing up. Early on, I took the kind of the moniker of holy listener.
Mm.
I think ultimately, to show up and you listen to the community, whether it's a church that's in trauma, and the fact that trust is built with you just showing up. So to me, I think people are drawn to people who have the energy and the passion, even if they have no idea where they're going. It's so wilderness journey stuff, right? How did Abraham know where he was going, or Moses? I mean, I just kept pointing out, oh, there's a pillar of cloud. Hey, let's follow that. Or so we use biblical imagery of the Exodus, of the wilderness journey. You know, we kind of define what's our Egypt and what's our promised land. So going through, you know, we began asking the question in curiosity, who's not here at the table that needs to be here? Can we reimagine this team with members of the team that have absolutely no Episcopal understanding of what the Episcopal Church is? Or can we invite the SBNRs and listen to them about what church they would build? You know, so we were curious, right? And that's what kept, I think, people coming. You know, let's see, my inspiration is that this work is so much bigger than me. So I did create this incubator for ideation. It was like the Star Trek Enterprise, right? So our team was built around curiosity. Maybe that, plain and simple.
I'm curious, well, especially Mike, but Joseph too. You were talking about being dropped out of the parachute in McKinney. And basically going up to people and saying, hey, would you be on the launch team for my new Episcopal church? What's the invitation to being on a launch team or being on a core team really like? What's the invitation that you found to be helpful, and maybe the invitation you found not to be so helpful, right? I tended to err on the side of, hey, I have this idea to do this cool new thing, you should come. And I meant you should come and help me and be on my team, but I didn't say that. And so people like, hey, I'm here, this is really cool, now I'm gonna go do something else. And I think that there is definitely a more effective way of inviting people to be part of leadership and part of a team. And Mike, you probably did those more effective things. So what were they?
Yeah. I'm gonna say a weird thing and then I'll go back and explain what it means. I didn't do a lot of inviting people into the launch team. It wasn't like, you know, I was at the grocery store and, you know, saw someone and said, hey, how would you like to be a part of this launch team today? I mean, like most everybody came to me. I didn't come to them. And so I think one big question is, what do you do with folks when they come to you? You know, I think one of the big things that new ministries have to offer is access into a core, access into leadership. Man, I think one of the reasons why our churches are in decline is because you just can't get you can't get in to them. You can't lead, you can't be a part of the core team. I mean, all those chairs are full, you know, and you got to wait for like 93 people to die, you know, in order to be a part of there. And it's like that. So we have, for us, it's like, what's cool about what you're doing is like, it's all wide open. You know, you want to serve, how's Sunday work for you? Like, yeah, you can, we need somebody to bring the donuts. So for us, it was like, it was the other way around. Like I got our core team, our launch team, which was small in the beginning. It was like my wife and I and like 4 other people. And we would go out in the community and just serve together. And then we would gather when we started in the house. And then but there was a sense if you engaged us, there was a sense of like, we're doing something that is interesting and special and important and kind. And so it was a very attractive sort of mission to be on. So we were kind of like the Blues Brothers, you know, we were on a mission from God. And that's how it felt. I mean, there was like that energy that was like compelling, you know, but everyone that came, you know, I would talk to them. I go to their house, ask for, you know, follow up was like what I did for the first 5 years. I would get into their house and just invite them onto this team, you know, and some people came and some people, you know, ran away with terror on their heels, which was great because if that's what the reaction was, this was not for you, you know? So I don't know, am I answering your question well?
Yeah, you are. In fact,
I think it's like, it's not, what I did anyway wasn't so much ready, set, go. It was go, set, ready. You know, I mean, you know, because we had to offer something that this launch team could connect to.
Mm-hmm. I think, Mike, what I ended up with, the team that I ended up with is more like what you are describing. And my team ended up being those people who showed up and actually had a passion for the work and the ministry that this thing was becoming. I think I also do wish, if we were to talk about things we wished we did differently, I wish I'd started off with more intentionality around bringing that team together, even from the get-go. And maybe that was because I just hadn't been in ministry long enough to be able to parachute drop. I wish I'd relied more on some of the gifts that traditional Episcopalians could have brought with them at the outset. But that might not have changed the ultimate outcome, like the outcome of 2 years later, having a team of people who came up and offered themselves.
Yeah. I wonder if you've encountered this too, Joseph. It's like part of like my walk with Jesus was formed, of course, by this experience, and that Jesus was like so faithful to bring me people that had gifts I didn't know I needed. And so like who was walking through the door was like very instructional to me. And I was like, they showed up and they're like, I'm good at this. And I'm like, well, congratulations. but turns out I really needed that. You know what I mean? You know, did you find a similar thing?
Yeah,
Joseph? Yeah, man,
I
it's
think if you're not being formed while you're forming,
oof.
my thinking is, and maybe in my world, I didn't parachute jump. I just kind of rolled into town. I don't know,
Yeah.
in the sense of, and I think there's different. Yeah, there's for the communities we're establishing. There are different ways to. Some entries you got to just parachute in, quote, behind enemy lines or whatever, and then sometimes you just kind of roll into town, put up your tent, and I think the key is, for me, it's having the courage to show up and maybe shut up while you listen. And then for me, maybe to your question, Katie, the one thing I found, because I've done the traditional parish for so many years, and a lot of times in a traditional inherited parish, a lot of that purpose is getting people in on Sunday morning into the pews and then focus on community and outreach. If you flip that, what I found was, instead of asking people to join my church plant, I was asking the question is, how can I join you? Like, what's your criteria for membership in this community? And the last thing I'll say is, one thing I discovered was God's already out there. God's already doing amazing work through nonprofits, through people who, through agnostics and atheists and pagans, and for me to come in with this almost colonizing sense, I shifted that and I said, I came in as Father Joe, but I came in with the sense of, tell me your story and what are your requirements for joining your community. And then all of a sudden we start forming. The garden forms, we have a purpose. The garden is about food insecurity and food justice, which then opened up finding amazing practitioners doing the work. So yeah, my thinking is it's organic and adaptable. It's adaptive leadership at its best.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we've got a lot of time for some conversation, and there's already 1 or 2 questions in the chat box, but maybe just my question before we jump into that is, those Clifton Strengths that we use for, if you've been to one of our leadership discernment retreats, we use this nifty tool called the Clifton Strengths Finder that divides sort of personality, character traits into 34 different themes. If you've not taken it, it's very interesting and can be worthwhile. But Joseph, you and Mike have used it, maybe not before you church planted, but since. How can you look back and see your Clifton Strengths at work as you were gathering your team, nurturing your team, leading your team, and what of those were like real gifts to you, and what maybe did you have to massage a little bit?
My top 2 were includer and woo. So when we did our launch team did it at the initial core values, we did a big core values exercise in the first year of our church to decide what they're going to be, and we did it together. And we came up with invite, involve, instruct, inspire. So that's got includer and woo all over it. Literally one of our values was include and involve. So the church was definitely a reflection of my Clifton Strengths. And quite interestingly, it still is, almost 20 years later. It's crazy to say, but I haven't been there in I haven't led the church in 5-6 years. It's still that way. Where I needed massaging is way down low on the list is any sort of structure or organization. That was definitely the help I needed. staff wise and leadership wise as the church grew. So I wish I could have used that Clifton strengths earlier, because I think I would have like recognized what I needed help with, partner with, you know, to boost up that other quadrant.
How about you, Joseph?
Yeah, absolutely. I had to go. I mean, I've kind of, it's kind of been woven into like my 5 are connectedness, woo, input, achiever, and learner. And I looked through those and I said, this is what gives me energy and what makes my heart sing. Like I'm thinking at this point in my life, I'm working with the diocese to convince them of this journey of where is the church going? How can, and how, what language, and so connectedness and woo, input, achiever, and learner are affirming to me that that's what I want to live into those 5. And then, yeah, asset-based congregational development is, like you, Mike, I'll find the people that love to just do the budget, or I'll find people that have an asset and a desire to help administrate, but to go out and cultivate and cast vision and get people excited. Yeah, I found all 5 of these. I haven't taken the deeper dive into all, you know, yeah. I'm afraid to find out what my bottom are, but
I will say too, man, like there's help you can get to balance that out. But there's also stuff like I had to do. It didn't matter that it was low. I had to get over it and like operate in something that wasn't my strength.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I love, because my administration, you find out those shadow sides, you have it in you. And so the learner in me says, all right, what do I need to learn? All right, I'll do organizational theory. I'll sit with a mentor. I'll find a coach. I'll work through it with my therapist, whoever, I will. Yeah, we all have the ability to learn, to stretch and grow. So, yeah.
So I put the link to the Clifton Strengths. If you've never used it, it's just, I think it's a helpful tool, right? DISC is probably also a helpful tool. There's probably a lot of helpful tools. This is just the one that we use for our leadership discernment events, and so I know the most about it. And it's not like an effort to typecast anybody, and there's also no profile. This is what I've heard and like read. There is no Clifton Strengths profile, nor is there a DISC profile that's ideal for church planting. It's purely about like self-knowledge, and specific today, the way that self-knowledge can help us figure out how we build and nurture teams. I wanted to throw out a question, because I think this one's really challenging, that Katie Shetlock put in the chat box. Wondering about the turn from the initial core team to the more formal board or vestry. That's the turn we're in, and it's been challenging. Like, all our people want to be part of making cool new things happen, but no one wants to be treasurer. What are the thoughts or advice? Mike, as a, kind of the woo non-structure person, I wonder how was that for you?
Yeah. I think it's more art than science, Katie, because like it's entirely unique to your ministry and your context. Like my coach told me, put off applying for mission status and having a vestry as long as you can. I mean, we were the fastest growing church in the Diocese of Dallas. We were much larger. We were like probably the 8th largest church in the diocese by the time we became a mission. and looking back at that, I can see some wisdom on that, because like you want the church to act its age. And so if having a bishops committee or whatever is going to make you operate like you're a church of like 40 years when you're really a church that's like 2. I mean, I would just encourage you, act your age. Although I will say you do need that structure. Like, you're going to need a treasurer and someone's going to need to be it. So don't put that off. Right. And the treasurer, of course, isn't you. So, I mean, you do need to like say, okay, gang, we need to impose some structure on this, especially if you're in a context where you need to start moving toward sustainability. Like, you need to build, and if you're growing, you need to build the structures that will allow the ministry to continue to grow. So I think that a lot of church plants make that mistake, in that they kind of get to a size that fits what their structure and able to do, and then they kind of stop there. So you gotta grow. I also think that I'm a big believer in being, if your diocese and bishop has supported you, like being a team player when it comes to that stuff. Like, for us to stand up and in front of diocesan council, and they vote and everybody claps and we parade in, like, that's good for the diocese to see. And your bishop needs that, because like she or he would love to have a win, and like when they're proud of you, and you want to let them be proud of you. So I think that's part of it too. So there, and you're right, there is a turn that has to be made, but I think the turn is more like, what does the ministry need structurally? Sorry, Joseph. Yeah.
No. It's good. I think it's asking the question of whether, helping to reimagine the role of vestry. If vestry is an end in and of itself, you're going to get stuck. If the vestry is a means, it's like a building. You can have a church building or a storefront or a garden. You need some structure, some place to gather and meet. I think the same with politics, and it is also about keeping that relationship with the diocese, but helping the diocese and the bishop learn the language or the lexicon of church planting. And I'm at a point of looking, what is the role of, is my role of priest changing what is essentially Episcopalian and what is negotiable? And I just think to allow it to adapt to your context. And it goes back to, we're always wanting to organize, and wanting though to keep those fresh eyes and that energy going, is to make sure that we don't organize ourselves to death. So what is the means to the end, and how do we make sure we don't create an end in of itself, I guess, right? So.
Let me just open up the floor. Teresa, I just saw that you added something. Would you maybe unmute and ask your question out loud?
Yes. Well, I'm in contact with a lot of established congregations to be in relationship, because we're building beloved community. And I really, that's part of the vision, is that we understand who our neighbors are. But a lot of times, suburban churches don't want to go into the city. So I think that, and providing a transformational relational encounter is part of our mission. And we are looking to them to help support us. And I keep thinking, this has to have something, our church planting experience and the transformational relationships have to mean something for you in order for you to want to give us money as well. I mean, I don't want to mince that. But, am I in a fantasy world, or do you all agree with that? Or, I think the tools we use to stay rooted in the fact that we are always looking to meet people who aren't inside our walls, that just cuts across the whole church. And I want to really bring that home when I visit places. And I just wonder if others have, thoughts or have had conversations around this idea.
I can add. the work I'm doing as a missioner is collaborations and partnerships are absolutely essential, and also across, there's a role, the beauty of traditional parishes with the beauty of their community and their ethos or their culture. And then it's a matter of trying to cross-pollinate, because the missional church planting idea is, I think we need partnerships, and it's a both and. And I'm working with St. John's, the traditional parish that has 12 members. And they're now beginning to imagine, how can we see our mission as a movement and not a location, but also to honor the gift of their tradition. And we are Episcopalian, we bring a lot of beautiful things to the table. So yeah, I'm trying to translate between the tradition and the missional, and it has to be a both and partnership collaboration.
And like building this sort of ability for people to feel like they're part of your team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they need that. It isn't like, yeah, we support you. It's like, no, I'm part of this ministry that is changing Detroit. That's what you're after, to get them to feel, right?
Oh, yes.
And
definitely.
that you're the tip of that, you're the tip of that tool that God is using to like transform the mission field around you. But you're just the leader of the team.
Just 2 days ago, I had a lunch with the leader of our clericus, a combination all active clergy from suburban parishes and whatnot, and we started talking about we need a retreat to bring all of our clergy together. One, to celebrate the assets and the gifts that each one brings to the mission on a broad, central Ohio area. And it was also mentioned that if each clergy person can share, this is my gift, this is what I bring. And a part of that is to also support the missional initiatives, and it's kind of asset-based congregational development. So we're going to live into that question of bringing all the clergy together to see what assets we bring to the table. Someone had said, well, this particular priest has a PhD in history. There's a gift in that that nobody knows about. We need to get together and listen to each other's story. And anyways, that was translated into, can that help support new Episcopal communities? So
beautiful. Thank you for stirring that up, Teresa.
Yeah, can I say one quick thing?
Yeah.
Because I do think there's a way in some of these ministries, especially if what you're doing is not a church like what I do.
Mm-hmm.
If it's like a ministry to help people, or there's a way to do it in which people will watch you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Go, oh my God, look how amazing they are. Honey, we should send them $50 or whatever. And I think there's some mission developers, not you, of course, but some mission developers I know that love that. They love filling that role of like, look at me, I'm out here doing this stuff. And so what they do is like, support is very passive, in that you're watching the mission developer do it. May I encourage you to say, that is not what I'm doing. I'm just part of a team, of a group of people that's doing what I do.
That's right. Wow.
And saying like, that's a huge distinction, because the thing is, like, the church actually loves it when you take the first approach, not the second, because they'll love raising you up. They'll love making you a star, and like, look at what we're doing and this person. And you do have to own some of that. But at the same time, be careful not to like build something where everyone's watching you.
That really resonates. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Hey y'all. Oh, sorry. What were you gonna say? Something,
I was just about to invite.
Oh,
yeah.
Open it up. So I am working on a nascent church plant here in Cincinnati, which is designed to meet the spiritual needs of foster, adoptive, and kinship families. And this conversation has been super helpful. And I have a two-part question that I would love to hear other folks' thoughts about. The first relates to what we're just talking about. And I was like, Mike, I was kind of like laughing earlier because I know we all have different contexts, and that's the beauty of these gatherings. But I was thinking, like, when you were saying, like, almost like people just wanted to be on the, like, it's just like an awesome opportunity for me. Majority of folks that are joining our community are spread really thin. Our parents of young kids, have full-time jobs, are already serving in other areas. And so I guess my question is around language of invitation that doesn't include apology or kind of shying away from the ask, in the sense of, I feel like when I've gotten to a place of like asking people, it's like I have all these prefaces, like, I know you've got a lot going on, like, I know life is crazy, but would you be willing to X, Y, or Z? And I really want to transform my mentality to a place of abundance and not feeling like, I want my invitation to reflect a spirit of abundance and not a spirit of scarcity. And I wonder how other people have done that, and what's been effective for you.
That's a really good one, Olivia.
Go ahead. Sorry, Katie.
I was just coming out of a meeting this morning with some leaders of Education for Ministry, the EFM program. And the folks in that room all sort of agreed that the strength, well, one of the many strengths of EFM is the commitment. Not everybody can make that commitment. So it is in some ways, to some degree, like an exclusive program, although it doesn't intend to be that way. But I know that when I facilitated it, there was some relief of the people who joined, of like, oh, finally something that's going to actually ask me to be here every week, or is actually going to ask me to do some reading. It's going to ask me to commit to, the awkwardness of being in a 4-year-long community. And I wonder, as a parent of young kids, if there's, and I don't think this exactly answers your question, but if there's ways we can ask that kind of commitment of them that's not, can you teach Sunday school every week, or can you help rearrange furniture every week, but is, like, for example, I needed core team members who really, like, your sole function is to not get flustered when metal chairs fall onto the concrete floor, as they will inevitably do on Sunday when we're setting them up. Like that's actually like part of being on this core team at the Abbey, is acting like we meant to do that. And I think there's some role for people who maybe can't, make pimento cheese sandwiches, and just like, can you model the kind of behavior or the kind of expectations that we need this new community to have, more than I even need to, like, count money or do something.
Yeah.
So yeah, there may be just different roles for different people that we can get at without the hedging. But what would you add to that, Mike?
I think, Olivia, did I get your name right? I'm popping up the thing on the, yeah. I think that's one aspect too of like go set ready. And like, you need to make space in the ministry for people to come and just be blessed by it and not help at all. Like, and like what I would say, in my experience anyway, I needed to do that from day one. Like, you could still be a part of our group and not help, and not even be a part of the core team, and, holy guacamole, that's particularly true in what your context is, so you may need folks on your team that can help, that have that time and space and energy to give. But I've been thinking about the Jesus and the woman at the well a lot lately. And I love it that Jesus just said, I've thought a lot about who the first person I'm going to tell that I'm the Messiah straight out, and it's you. I love that. And so, I mean, like, you can find a way to say to people that you encounter, I would love to have you be a part of what we're doing. Well, I can't because I know, but you don't have to do any of that stuff. It isn't, I'm not asking to add one more thing. Just come and just be blessed by this community that we're trying to build. And a lot of people, your context is a really radical example of it, but I think it's true. And a lot of them, like, they feel disqualified from just participating in the body of Christ at all, you know, because of their lives and who they are. And so it's just like, I love when you talk about abundance. It's like, yeah, that we're having this conversation right now is because Jesus might be calling you to be a part of what we're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's super helpful. It's like, I want to give people the space to just be blessed, as you said, and not feel like it's adding another thing on their to-do list. But I also don't want to have this mindset of like, well, they would never say yes, so I'm not going to ask. And so it's like finding the balance between that tension. So that was really helpful.
You got to leave that up to God, because
Yeah.
Like, you could be that they bring the cookies could be a real lifeline for them.
I wonder if you can reframe the question. Can you come to the question from another angle? I mean, creating a community of abundance is also abundant energy. And you touched on it, Olivia, because to sit down and hear their story. Where is that depletion coming from? What is exhausting you? And I think when you develop a relationship and trust, when that happens, then bringing the cookies are tied to a broader question, and the motivation is not depletion, but this is going to give me energy. But I mean, maybe it begins starting somewhere else before that first ask of bringing the cookies or the pimento cheese or putting the chairs up, you know, is that, wow, when I put these chairs up, this is prayer. This is a way that I'm celebrating the God of this community. I don't know, maybe creating a community of a theology of abundance that people just, you know, that relate out of a relationship. I don't know. So flipping it maybe.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Thank you.
Jen Ellen, you had a hand up. Do you still have a question or something?
Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of also reframing the question, and you know, being willing to be as vulnerable as the folks that you're talking to about you know, like, for instance, I just asked somebody to join my core team and I was afraid he would say no. And so I framed the question, and these are the skills you have. These are the gifts that you have that I don't have. And to have you join with me on this would be such a gift to the ministry and the work that we're doing here. And that is kind of the abundance of gifts. I can't do it all, right? But the Holy Spirit is working through all the people around me in this community, and they all have different gifts, and that has led to more yeses and fewer I don't have time for that. So just, you know, learning to work the apology out of the message and instead go with the assumption that if God moves them to do it, they'll do it, right? And sometimes it takes reminding them the gifts that they've been given. That was all I was going to add. You know, the Clifton strengths. I am not a woo. I need woos around me.
That's really good and helpful. Thank you, Jen.
Probably have time for one more. Lawrence, did you have something to add? You unmuted. I don't know if that was a sign or not.
No, I'm just sorry. I just got it unmuted here. I've been writing notes like crazy.
Hey, good.
Yay.
Could I say I have one thing I wanted to be sure and say before we were done.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring us down a peg, and then you can, when Joseph, you and Katie can lift the group back up. One thing I want to tell you about your core team someone in your core team is going to hurt you. And it will suck. It will hurt, man. Like the investment that you put in these folks, it is like real, and you're on this team, and then they'll look at you one day and go, we're disappointed and we're leaving, goodbye. I think of all the things that was hard for me in planting St. Andrews, that was the hardest. And I remember back in my day, we had church planter boot camp. That was before there was anything close to a staff officer for church planting infrastructure. Like I had to go to like this, I went to this like evangelical boot camp thing, but I had to spit out the seeds and keep the fruit, you know. But one of the best things that I heard in that thing was that there's going to be scaffolding people. You know, that when you build a building, a lot of the work they do is the scaffolding for the outside to get the structure. And then there's just a day you drive by it and the scaffolding's gone. And so like when you're starting, the people that are with you when you start, once the church gets built, and you talk about like adding the bishop's committee and the ministry's growing, like you may look up one day and they're gone, you know, and that isn't a reflection on you. It's just that, you know, there's a certain sort of person that's attracted to this sort of work. And when you're no longer that sort of work, they leave. And then another thing I found is that there's some folks that just really enjoy being a very important part of a very small team and that close knitness. And if the thing actually starts to work and then it's a bigger group and they're not as important as they used to feel, then they're like deuces. I'll tell you, I've still, all these years later, I've still don't know how to take those losses hard. But I take them a little better than I used to. So I pray that you'll remember this, because the people that God and God's love for you will send you may not be with you the whole time. And that you need to love them, let them help you, and then when the time comes, let them go. On that happy note. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think also be really, really clear on your why. And
Yeah.
what are you inviting them into? To be really upfront and honest, to say I'm inviting you and in that. And I think, yeah, being a leader in that is also in the midst of that, your no means no. What is your no when it comes to people and their gifts, and what is your yes? To me, it is really being clear on that initial invite. And then it is fluid, and sometimes you have to say no, and sometimes you gently receive and you gently release, and sometimes you have to say, this is not something I think you have gifts for. How do you have those conversations? But I'm with you, Mike. But without pain, what's the cross, right? If we're putting ourselves out there, right?
Mm-hmm. So we're about at that time. I put a link in the chat box, just a suggestion of a podcast that I found really helpful. The New Churches podcast. I don't know if you've ever listened to it. I like to give a little caveat when I recommend this podcast, which is really just that it's very not Episcopalian. So
Most things aren't.
as many church planting resources are not. So, there's going to be some assumptions that they make, maybe particular for me, it's about like women in ministry, that are not the assumptions that I make. And, we just have the maturity to kind of know that they're from a different tradition and that there's something that can be learned. But they have some great episodes on core teams that I have found really helpful, and on a whole lot of other stuff as well. So check it out if you think that might be helpful for you. Mike and Joseph, thank you so much. What a great conversation. We could go on for another hour. And if there is anybody that wants to linger for another 10 minutes or so, I will leave the Zoom space up for about another 10 minutes if you just want to say hi or if you got more questions. Mike, Joseph, feel free to stay on or to jump off if you need to get to the next thing. But thanks, guys. We will not have a third Thursday conversation in November because there's just too much stuff going on. But we will be back in December with something on mental health and addiction in New Church Starts. So stay tuned to that, and blessings on your day.
Yeah, I gotta go to a lunch, but
Hey,
love,
Mike,
love.
great
Yep.
to see you, my friend.
Hey, you too, brother.
Bye, Mike.
Thank you for what y'all are doing.
Let me stop the recording.